Good evening, everyone. I'm Terry Conley, and welcome to Budgeting for the New Year. We're excited to have you here tonight, and this is where you start 2023 off the right way. A little bit of logistics for the agenda. You are on mute, everyone's on mute, and if you have any questions, you can certainly submit those to the queue, and then I'll be looking for those throughout our presentation. This particular presentation is set up in 4 different sections. We will be covering what a budget is and what your plan will look like. In section 2, we're actually going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into your expenses, so what will be in your budget. In section 3, we're going to look at various different types of budgets and then really take a closer look at zero-based budgeting as a tool and go over some common rules that you can use. And then in section 4, we're going to just wrap up with some top 10 tips and some common mistakes that people do when they're budgeting. And essentially, there will be a little bit of a breakout session, and that will give me an opportunity to go back into the questions and see if there's anything that we need to take a look at and address any of the questions that may pop up during the evening. So let's look at defining a budget. What is the definition of budgeting? And essentially, it is a plan for your money. You are going to tell your money where to go for the month. You're going to allocate all of the funds, all of the income that's coming in based upon the expenses that you have. But it's just a plan for how to use your money for the month. And when we're going over these budgets, we are looking at it from a monthly perspective, not a weekly perspective. What can you do with your money? There are really only 3 things that you can do with money. You can spend it, save it, or give it away. So these are some common allocations for, what to do with money. We're not going to get any deeper than this when it comes to these 3 allocations or 3 areas. We're going to focus tonight on basically the budgeting part of it. A lot of times, people resist budgeting because of how they feel about it. And interestingly, there are 5 stages of grief, and the 4 feelings that are depicted on this screen are part of those 5 stages of grief. There's denial, anger, dread, and acceptance. And what we want to get to is to the point where you're feeling comfortable with budgeting, you're feeling comfortable with your money, and you're getting to the point where you're accepting, what you have for an income and the expenses that are hitting that every month. So we want to minimize any resistance that you have about budgeting, because it's an amazing tool. It's an amazing tool for you to just to get a handle on what you're spending, make any adjustments that need to be made, as well as save and to build growth in your wealth. So what I want to do is just take a minute and reflect on what has held you back from budgeting in the past. You can go back to a couple of these emotions and reflect on those, but just take a moment to really think about, how come I haven't been able to budget in the past? I hope you took a moment to reflect on why you were resisting budgeting and what we can do to overcome those feelings going forward. And sometimes it's just about mindset. And I've done this class several times, and here's some common feedback that we've got from those who do budgeting and who use it as a tool for their month. Budgeting gives me freedom to spend. Budgeting helps me reduce my stress because I know where I spend and how much I spend. Budgeting is a game plan. It's a useful tool when communicating with my wife because we do it together. So if you think about budgeting in these mindsets, then it changes everything, right? So it's something that you can embrace, something that you can use, and that's really what we want to do going forward. So what needs to be in your budget? Everything. If you're spending any money, it doesn't matter if it's at the local coffee shop. And being in New England, we know that there's a coffee shop on every corner. It's called Dunkin' Donuts. And honestly, that was one area where I really had to make a conscientious effort not to pull in every time I was driving by, because I did a budget and I realized that I was spending upwards of $80 a month on Dunkin' Donuts. So on Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So everything that you're spending money on needs to be included in your budget. And sometimes that's a little bit difficult to assess because you don't know if you're using cash, you certainly don't know what you're spending money on. If you're using a debit card and a credit card, then typically you have better tools available for you to keep track of those transactions. So let's look at what some of those items would be. Here's a list of common things that should be in your budget. Food, housing, and that can be whether you're renting or your mortgage. Utilities, which includes water, electricity, gas, any heat source that you have. Insurance, and that would include medical, life, disabilities, homeowners or renters insurance. For vehicles, you would include loan payments, maintenance, gas, tolls, insurance, a replacement plan. And a little bit about a replacement plan. When I was doing our budget with my husband a couple of years ago, we had a segment for vehicles, and he asked me to add a replacement plan, and I didn't really understand what that meant. And he explained that, you know, our vehicles aren't going to last forever. So if we have some extra dollars available per month, can we put those into savings so that we can build up a replacement plan so that, you know, when we're ready to replace our vehicles, we'll have some money set aside for that. So that's what the replacement plan means. For loans, you're looking at credit cards, and for the purposes of a budget, you want to use minimum payments. HELOCs, that's a home equity line of credit. So if you have a HELOC, that's where you'd want to put it on the loans side, and then any personal loans you might have. The next part is cables or subscriptions. If you have streaming services, your landline or your cell phone, savings, student loans, clothing, entertainment, wellness, and pets. So these are all of the items. And hopefully you've had a chance to download the materials that are on our events page. Those are the expense sheet, and then there's also a budgeting form. So we're going to take a look at the expense sheet first. And this is really, you don't have to have the sheet, you don't have to download it. But what I really want you to do is take about 5 minutes and list all of these monthly expenses that you have. And the amount doesn't have to be precise. It can be an approximate amount, but I really want you to get into the habit of really looking at what expenses do I have every month. You need to know where your money is going, right? That's this first step. So take about 5 minutes and just do this exercise to really look at where is my money going. Okay, welcome back. I hope that was an eye-opening exercise for you. I know the first time that I did it, it was very eye-opening. I was a little bit surprised. We're going to get into some tools in a little bit, but I will say that, and I'm going to go back to this for just a second. If you're not sure where your money is going, if you use a debit card or a credit card, please use the transaction activity with your credit card company, or for Triangle Credit Union or any other financial institution. There's online and mobile banking. And when you use those tools, that online banking, you can go out to account activity and you'll find every transaction that you've ever made for the month. And, you know, just separate that into housing, food, water, electricity, and so on and so forth. Take the time to really drill down, if you will, on how you're spending your money and what those debit transactions look like. And same thing with your credit card company. So those are amazing tools. Those online tools for activities, really, really important when you're doing this first step. All right, so going into the next section, we're going to look at the types of budgets. There's a surplus budget, which means at the end of the month, you have more money than you have expenses. So you're in the black. A deficit budget is when you have no money left, but you have expenses, you have more expenses. So, and unfortunately, I believe as a society, we run in the red. That's what that means. When you hear that, oh, we're in the red, that means that you ran out of money for the month, basically. So you have a deficit budget. What we want to focus on is a balanced budget or a zero-based budget. And this is the tool that I use. Essentially, it means that your income equals your expenses for the month. So at the end of the month, you have zero left over. And we're going to go over that in a few minutes, a little bit more. But here's some basic rules. First, you want to use a pencil, and that's a little old school, I understand, especially now that we have these online forms that similar to what you downloaded for this particular webinar tonight. But the principle is that if you have a pencil with an eraser, you can go back and make adjustments, right? So that's what you really want to do, even with the spreadsheet or with the Excel sheet that you have for the budget. You're going to want to go back and make adjustments because you want to get to the point where at the end of the budget, the plan for your money for the month, there is a zero allocation or there's a $0 left over. So you might get a better understanding of that when we actually look at the budget sheet. But every dollar has an allocation, meaning you're going to allot an expense for every dollar that comes in. At the end of the month, there is no money left over. Surplus dollars should be allocated to savings. And if you're over budget, then you have to start over and make those adjustments. So let's take a look at creating a budget. So at the top, you're going to see that this is your gross monthly income. This is before taxes. The sheet, and I'm going to show this to you in just a second, but the sheet will automatically calculate as soon as you put an amount in your gross monthly income box, these taxes will automatically calculate what you owe depending on your tax bracket. This is a 20% tax bracket. So your total taxes on $5,000 for the month after taxes is $3,625. And then I just threw in some numbers here about some expenses. And so you can see that it calculates automatically your total fixed expenses, your total variable expenses, your total discretionary expenses, and total expenses for the month, $635. So here's your income at the bottom, $3,625. Your total expenses, $635, and then your balance is $2,990. So this is not a real budget. It was just to show you what the budget sheet looks like, basically. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to bring up the actual budget, and then we're going to go over that, and I'll share my screen again. I want to walk you through this. I do think that this is an amazing tool. I use this tool, and I hope that you have an opportunity to download it because I feel like that this will really take you to the next level when it comes to preparing a budget. So we're going to do $7,000 for your gross monthly income. So this is before taxes. Again, the way that the Excel file is set up is that it will calculate your taxes for you, giving you an approximate amount. So your net income, which means this is income after taxes, it's $5,075. So now let's really try and put some in the scenario. For credit union savings, everybody likes to pay themselves first. I feel like that's a principle that we all try to live by. So let's put $300 in that. Then our housing for the month is $1,500. Our student loans, let's go $400. Our vehicle loan payment, $250. Our vehicle maintenance, we'll just put $50 in. We don't need new tires anytime soon. Our replacement, we'll do another $50. Auto insurance, $200. Homeowners and renters insurance, let's do $80. Health insurance, $500. Life insurance, $80. Gas, which is heating, what you're using as a heating source, we'll put 100. Actually, we'll put 100 for most all of these here. Well, water, we don't need to do $100 worth of water. Cable or internet. Cell phone. Food, this is always a hard one. Let's put 500 in that. Actually, let's go a little bit higher. Clothing. Poles. Gas. Credit card. Now this is minimum payments is what you want to put for your credit cards. Oops, not 2,500. That would be a lot. All right. Entertainment. Entertainment is anytime you go out to eat, you go to a concert. And when I say anytime you go out to eat, those Dunkin' Donut runs aren't going to go under food. They're going to go under entertainment, because this isn't any food that you get on the fly, right? So we're going to put we'll put $200 now for that. Wellness, thank God for Planet Fitness. I don't have any pets, and for charitable giving, I'm going to do $100. All right, so the way that the spreadsheet is set up is that it calculated everything for us. So you can see that your expenses under fixed expenses is 3,410. Under variable expenses, it's 1,705. Under discretionary expenses, it's 310. So our total income is 5,075. Our total monthly expenses, 5,425. So we have a deficit right now of $350. Basically, what that means is that we've overspent by 350. We want to get this to zero, right? So now we have to go back using old school would be pencil. Now we're just going to use this Excel sheet. So it makes it super easy, but we're going to make we're going to reallocate our dollars. So instead of credit union savings, let's do 150. And maybe we don't really think that we're going to actually need anything for vehicle maintenance. So we'll do 0 for this month. And maybe because it seems like it's a tight month with some of the other stuff that we've got going on, let's go down to entertainment and reduce that to basically $50. And now we have a balanced budget or a zero-based budget. So we've got our income of $5,075 matches our expenses of $5,075. So that's how you do a zero-based budget. You want to list all of your expenses, put all of those in the budget sheet, and then just make adjustments so that for the month, and this is, you're projecting this out, right? So this isn't after the fact, you're planning for this. This is how you're going to spend your money for the month. Step 2, if you have downloaded the budget sheet, please take 5 minutes to input those numbers from your expense sheet that you've already done. You're now going to transfer all of those numbers into the budget sheet, and let's see how this works out for you. If you're doing this budget as a couple, meaning you have a partner, you're married, please do the budget together. And it's essential for that, just in terms of, coming together every month to do a budget is very, very important. It really takes the emotions out of it going forward if you do a budget together. So we're going to do 5 minutes on this exercise, and then we'll go on. Thanks. Okay, well, I hope that you found the budget sheet friendly and easy to navigate. It really is. It's something that you have to do a lot to get really familiar with it and to get a better understanding of where those expenses are going and how to plan for them for the month. So let's go over our top 10 tips for using a zero-based budget. The first one is that you want to assign every dollar at the beginning of the month. Again, this is a plan, right? This isn't a past perspective. This is a plan for the month. This is how I'm going to spend my money for the month. If you're married or have a partner, you want to work as a team. Number 3, don't get discouraged. It takes 3 to 6 months to really get the hang of this. So you want to, just give yourself a little bit of credit for doing it in the first place. I don't know the statistics on how many people do a budget in the United States. I'm going to say that we're an elite group. So I want you to be encouraged that you're doing this in the first place and give yourself some time to really get the hang of it. Number 4, pay what's important first. That means housing, utilities, food, clothing, and transportation. Number 5, and oh, by the way, clothing isn't giving you a license to go out and get the nicest and newest trend. Clothing is essentials, right? So if you need new boots because we live in New England and it's the wintertime and the old boots have a hole in them, that's really the only clothing that you need, right? You don't need to go out and get, something that's top shelf. As a matter of fact, we do a lot of thrifting in our house. So there's some really good finds out there. So that's what I want to just clarify about clothing. Number 5, you want to put a little bit of a buffer in your budget. And the reason why we do this, there's a thing called Murphy's Law, which if something bad's going to happen, and it's going to most likely happen to you at some point. And this is really important when it comes to especially the savings. And if you have an emergency fund, and we'll go into that in just a few more minutes, but you really want to lean towards the higher end when you're looking at your budget in terms of those dollars, like, put a little extra in on each line item if you can. Number 6, use a cash envelope system where you overspend. The grocery store or your food budget is usually the most likely area that you're going to overspend. I hear this all the time. I spend way too much money when I go to the grocery store. So what you want to do for the cash envelope system is you're going to take, if there's 4 weeks in the month, you're going to take 4 envelopes, label them week 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if your budget for the month is $500, then you're going to get cash out and put $125 into each of those envelopes. Then you go to the grocery store, and that's the only money that you use. You don't use your debit card. You don't use your credit card. You actually use the cash that's in your envelope to pay for those groceries. So I was just talking to somebody where I work at the credit union the other day. And one of the things that she does, I'd never heard of this before, but she actually, she'll go through the grocery store, and she got to the point when she was about right before checkout, she would put 5 items back, things that she, really thought about and was like, you know what, we really don't need these. And this is a person who probably can really afford it, but she doesn't want to overspend. She's running on a budget. So kudos to her for doing that exercise. Number 7, tighten up your belt and trim the waist. And we're not talking about fitness here. We're talking about financial fitness, right? So this is really when you want to assess all of your expenses. Look to see if there's areas where you can reduce your spending. My husband and I just quit our cable company. And what we did is we changed our internet service. We went with a higher speed internet. And I will say that we're very happy with that. We got rid of all of our cable and we picked up a new streaming service. And we reduced our expense on that particular line item by about $130 a month. So that was a really good savings. And another area too that I would encourage you to look at are insurances, particularly auto insurance or homeowners insurance. We always bundle those. And what I typically do every 2 years, I'll do some phone calls to some reputable insurance companies and ask them for a quote, give them my deductibles, my coverage amounts, and ask them to quote apples to apples. So I did make the mistake one time of actually inputting that into a search engine site, and we got inundated with phone calls and emails. So I don't encourage you to do that, but I do encourage you to look when you're looking at your expenses, some line items can be reviewed periodically and make those adjustments, make those phone calls to reduce the amount. Number 8, be consistent with weekly check-ins. This is so important. Just make sure that you're on track. And that kind of leads into number 9, measure your success. You want to look and see where you're, how are you doing? And encourage one another, especially if you're doing this budgeting thing together as a, that's huge, right? So talk about your successes and make any adjustments that are necessary. And number 10, use cool online tools. So there are a lot of apps out there, budgeting apps. Please, I encourage you to use those. And again, going back to online and mobile banking, using your credit card companies to go back and look at transaction activity. Those are all really important when it comes to identifying your expenses and hitting your monthly budget. 5 common obstacles. Number 1, not finding the easiest way to track your money. And we just mentioned that, right? So if you're using cash, it is very hard to track your spending. So if you use your debit card, your credit card, you can easily go back to your financial institution or your credit company and look at your transaction activity. So I encourage you to do that. Assume your budget will be the same every month. It will not be the same. We always get hit with some extra expenses. Sometimes we actually get an extra payday, so it's not all bad, but don't ever assume that your budget's going to be the same. Number 3, not revisiting your budget. Number 4, that should actually be setting. Sorry about that, guys, a little typo. Not setting aside money for unexpected expenses. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I really encourage you to put $1,000 into an emergency fund. I teach Financial Peace University, which is a Dave Ramsey product. These are principles and that he subscribes to, and they're called the baby steps. And one of the first things that he encourages you to do is put $1,000 in an emergency fund and just use that money for emergencies. It's not a going out to eat fund. It's not I'm going to swing by Dunkin' Donuts fund, and it's nothing like that. It's simply for emergencies. But put that in an account at your financial institution where you really don't have super easy access to it. I actually have mine in our online savings account where it is easy to get, but I really purposely try not to use that unless it is an emergency. And number 5, forget to set aside money for enjoyment and the things that you want to do. When you've had some good success, and you might want to, especially if you are doing this as a couple, you might want to look and say, look, if we hit our monthly budget 2 months in a row, let's go out to eat. Let's, go into Boston or go somewhere special for a dinner. So here's my contact information. I am Terry Conley. I mentioned that earlier. I have been with Triangle for 15 years, going on 15 years. And I work in the marketing department. I've done the webinar, this particular webinar, quite a bit. And I will say that I use these tools. They work for me, and hopefully they'll work for you. And I do encourage you to reach out to me, tconley@trianglecu.org with any questions that you have. And again, I want to thank you all for spending your time with me tonight. And I hope that you found this particular webinar useful. Have a good night, everyone.